All right, welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Adam Kieffer. Thanks for coming to the TVM Showcase session. I'm joined by your presenters today, Elizabeth, Polina, and Paula, and I'm going to be kind of hosting and facilitating this session. And hopefully by the end, you'll feel a little bit more confident and have a better understanding of TVM in practice. So I'm going to let each of the presenters briefly introduce themselves, and then I'm going to just give a very brief overall of what TVM is, just for those who might not know. And then the majority of today's session will be each of these three presenters talking through a TVM lesson. And then after each one talks through their lesson, there'll be a couple minutes for you guys to ask them questions directly about anything that you saw them talking about. So plenty of time for questions built into this session, and feel free to use the chat anytime. I will be monitoring the chat. All right, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. The lesson I'll be presenting today was created for my ESL class at Burnsville School for Adults, but I've also used TVM in more of a one-room schoolhouse context with Dakota GED in Minneapolis.
Hi, I'm Paula Huffman, and I work for Metro North ABE, the Blaine Learning Lab site, and I am going to show you the TVM lesson made for level 1 ESL learners.
Paula, can you just introduce yourself real quick?
I forgot to unmute. I should know better. Anyhow, I'm a teacher with the Osseo ABE, and I'm going to share a lesson that I used with my GED and adult diploma learners. But I also do the lessons with other lower levels, and I also mentor the other teachers on staff on how to use TVM.
Okay, thanks very much to all our presenters. All right, well, for those of you who don't know, TVM stands for Teacher Verification Model. It's brand new to Minnesota ABE, though it is not new. It's a very old model, in fact. But the process for becoming certified in Minnesota ABE is brand new as of March of this year. It is a process, it's a professional development process, and it's a way for you guys to count proxy hours for asynchronous lessons once you're verified. So what we have decided to do is to certify the teacher, not their lessons. So thus there is a little bit in-depth PD process. The three teachers here have been through it. They could speak to it. And so they're free to start using this model with their students. The first question might be, what is a TVM lesson, or what counts as a TVM lesson? It's basically the same things that could count for any type of lesson, in that it could be digital, it could be paper-based, it could be a combination of both. But we do have some standards and requirements that differentiates it then from homework. So we do have some pieces, kind of essential pieces for high quality TVM lesson, which would include an instruction, practice, and assessment component, incorporating CCRS, TIFF, ACEs, North Star, and then include directions for learners and a plan for them to submit their work and receive feedback. So all of these bulleted pieces here are really essential components. And then, of course, well, what doesn't count, or what couldn't count? And these are the things we might, label as homework, or traditionally label as homework, which would be any sort of activity that's assigned in isolation, without context or without connection to what's happening in class. Something you might say is, here, just do this workbook and just hand it to a student, and there's no support, there's no the teacher's not present. Another phrase you might hear as a teacher may say, hey, did you watch that video link I sent you? But it's just a video, right? So there's no wraparound support. There's no pre-teaching. There's no assessment. There's no a chance for students to reflect on their learning. There's no directions about what the students are do with what they supposedly learn. So if you decide to go through the TVM certification process, and I highly encourage that you do, you will learn very clearly what these differences are, and they're outlined very clearly in the course. So if you're not TVM certified and your colleague is, and they develop some great stuff, you can use it, but you cannot count proxy hours for your learners' work for them. Only TVM teachers who assign work to their learners can count and earn proxy hours for that work. So again, the process is we're certifying the teachers, and once the teacher's certified, they're kind of good to go. So there's a few steps. There's the distance learning basics course, modules 1 through 5. And then unless you've done a distance learning cohort in the past, then you could potentially skip that. But we highly recommend it for everyone because it's brand new. We made it, we redid it this year. It's great content, great for everyone, regardless of what kind of teaching you're currently doing. Step 2 is completing modules 5 and 6 in the course. Step 3 is you're going to create a sample TVM lesson and materials, and we provide a lesson plan template that guides you through the process. Then you're going to participate in a certification webinar and get peer feedback during that webinar. You'll have a chance to review your lesson. Oh, I forgot to do that slide. The next webinar is December 6th from 2 to 4. So if you're thinking about becoming TVM certified, it's coming up pretty quick. But we'll do webinars every other month. So the next one will be in February after the December one. Finally, after you participate in that webinar, you get feedback from your peers. You'll revise and submit your final TVM lesson for approval, and then hopefully you'll get certified and they'll see use. And then you can share that certification with your program manager, put it in your staff history in SID, and then you can start assigning TVM lessons with your students. Okay, I know this looks like a lot. It may feel like a lot, but it's doable. The 3 teachers here today have done it. Lots of TVM resources for you. I'm not going to take time to go to any of these right now, except for real quick, if some of you don't know the online course I was referring to in the previous slide, this is it. It is on the Literacy Minnesota online training webpage. This is the title of the course right here. And it's split up into 6 modules. So there's modules 1 through 4. Modules 5 and 6 are required. Modules 6 is specifically about TVM. And these are all the steps in module 6. So if you weren't sure what I was talking about, this is the course. You can enroll yourself in it, and you could do it at your own pace. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Elizabeth. And before I do, is there anything urgent in the chat here? Okay, Astrid chatted that. That's great. All right, Elizabeth, I'll let you take over. And just tell me when you want me to advance the slides.
Okay. So this lesson I created actually just this week for my learners in an ESL level 3 class, what my program calls Advanced Beginning ESL. And it's based on this text from the Reading Skills for Today's Adults website from Southwest ABE. If you are not familiar with this resource, I cannot recommend it highly enough. There are a ton of adult appropriate stories starting at CCRS level A. And they all have pre-reading questions, post-reading questions, and then a fairly substantial supplement, which has vocabulary exercises, speaking, writing. I mean, it's just great, and it's all there. It's all free. It's right there for you. I love it. So I've been using this very heavily in my ESL class this year. Can go ahead. Yes, Jamie, it's also known as the Marshall Reading Program, Reading Skills for Today's Adults. It's linked in the slides. So I just wanted to clarify for a second that Reading Skills for Today's Adults is indeed an approved distance learning platform for Minnesota ABE. So if I were not using all of these materials in my class, I could print them off and give them to my learners. My learners complete the activities, give the papers back to me. I check that they did it, and then they can earn proxy hours by using this as a distance learning platform. But my program is not using this website as a distance learning program. So I am choosing to use it in my class for synchronous contact hours. And I'm also choosing to create supplemental material that my students can work on outside of class as a TVM lesson. So it's okay if you want to create TVM lessons that supplement and support work that learners are already doing for a distance learning platform. You just have to be very careful that you're not double counting hours. For example, in my other program, I created a lesson that had some Khan Academy exercises as part of the TVM lesson, but I very intentionally did not count proxy hours for that portion because students' time on Khan Academy was already being counted in the Khan Academy distance learning proxy hours class. So just know that you can use distance learning platforms as the basis for your TVM lessons. You can create supplemental content. You just have to be careful not to double count anything. You can go ahead to the next slide. So this lesson, I tried to make it very, very, very simple for my learners and for myself. It's just 3 parts. Students watch a video. That's the instructional component. And I'm counting that as half an hour of proxy hour time. Then they do some writing practice on paper, just write a few sentences. I'm counting that as 15 minutes. And then they take a quiz through Google Forms. I'm counting that as another 15 minutes. So 1 hour total for completing this lesson. This is a screenshot of what it looks like in Google Classroom. But as we'll see in a moment, most of my learners probably aren't going to access it through Google Classroom. You can go ahead to the next slide. So Burnsville has adopted a hybrid program model this year, meaning we have online class 1 day a week and in-person class 3 days a week, which means that every student in my class has to use their District 191 email account to get the Google Meet link for our online class. They also are supposed to be using Google Classroom to access class materials. Plus, most of them have MobiMax and maybe an additional distance learning platform that they're also using. So this has not been easy for everyone. We really tried to front load the technology instruction at the beginning of the school year, but then it just became apparent that this was very overwhelming for a lot of my students. So I've really tried to scale back on the technology a bit. I still am requiring everyone has to use email, but I'm trying to scaffold the technology use a little more. Next slide. So the way I've done this is I've really just focused on teaching my students to log into their email and then click on links. So whenever we have online class, I just send the Google Meet link in an email, Google Meet link in the subject line, they just click the link to join the class. And then I discovered I can do something kind of similar for assignments. I can put the assignment in Google Classroom, but then right in the instructions in Google Classroom, I put the link to each activity. So this would be instead of or in addition to attaching things in Google Classroom. If you use Google Classroom, you can add a video or a link to a PDF or whatever. But I'm just putting links to materials directly in the instructions, because then when I post it in Google Classroom sends an email to all my students with the instructions and then with these links. So students can actually do this entire TVM lesson without even having to go in to Google Classroom. Some of my students will go into Google Classroom and do it, but they don't have to if that is just a little too much technology for them. Go ahead to the next slide. So yesterday I passed out this homework page to my students, a physical piece of paper with the instructions. They have to log into their school email. They need to look for the message that has new assignment homework in the subject line. That's what Google Classroom will send out. Then they click the link to watch the video. They write their sentences in the graphic organizer on this paper. Then they click the other link from the email to take the quiz. And then hopefully when they come back to class next week, they will turn in their paper to me. Go ahead to the next slide. And I just wanted to address, yes, that paper says homework really big at the top, and TVM is not supposed to be homework. But homework in the way we use it in the certification webinar means that it's just more like busy work, activities that are not always directly related to instruction, just, you know, worksheets with practice, not necessarily followed up by the teacher. This is a true TVM lesson, what I've created, because it has that video as the instructional component. It is directly related to what we were working on in class all week. And I'll be verifying that everyone turned in their paper to me and completed the Google Form quiz. But I decided to call it homework because that's a familiar concept to my students. They understand what homework is. It's probably familiar to your students too. So that's really just for my students' ease of understanding what they're supposed to do. Go ahead to the next slide. Oh, so Michelle has a question in the chat about feedback. So students will get some automated feedback from the Google Form quiz. I decided to make all the questions multiple choice so they could just click submit and get feedback right away. I'm not going to go into how to do this in Google Forms, but there is a way where you can type feedback that all students, if they answer a question incorrectly, they'll get a certain comment. And then if they answer it correctly, you can also put a different comment if they answer it correctly. So that's nice. And then I will have to wait till I get their papers back and then look at their papers and check those sentences. But again, I tried to keep it as simple as possible, so it's not going to take me hours and hours to correct. And then I'll just give them a little bit of written feedback on their paper and give them their paper back the next time I see them in class. Adam, do we have time to take questions right now, or should we move on to Polina?
Nope, we got time for, we got 2 or 3 minutes for questions for you.
Great. So any questions, you can unmute yourself or just type in the chat.
Elizabeth, I love that you call it homework because that's exactly what students are doing. They're doing work outside of class at home. That's what it is. So let's call it what it is.
Yeah, well, that's my hope that they're doing it. Yeah. But yeah, like Adam said in the chat, it's the student facing term for it, not the, it's not really just drill and kill practice. Betsy asked in the chat, do you have to keep a copy of what the students turn in or just mark that it was done? No, I am not going to keep all of my students' papers. I'm going to give them written feedback and give the papers back to the students. And then I'll just record in my TVM lesson log that who completed the assignment.
That's the V in verification. Okay, well, okay, one more from Michelle.
Oh, Michelle, yes. Most of my students are using phones or mobile devices, so I certainly don't expect them to print anything. I gave them that paper copy yesterday when I saw them in class. So hopefully they'll bring it back to me next week.
All right, thanks for your questions, everyone. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
We'll also probably have a minute or two at the end of the session today in case something else pops in your brain between now and then. And if it does, just put it in the chat. All right, let's move on to our second presenter, Paula Huffman. I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. So just like I said before, my TVM lesson is created for ESL level 1, and I just want to define it. So my ESL level 1 students can have a speaking of anywhere of between 0 and a 3, usually not higher than a 3, and a CASA's reading test 81 or 82X, and they're all under 200. Meaning the more practice we can get in class and especially outside of class is better. Adam, if you can go to the next one. At the end of this presentation, you guys will all have access to our completed lesson plans, and it has all the links. So if you want to see what is the Google Meet Google slides that you use, or what does this quiz look like, you can click on any of the links. They're all active. You are more than welcome to do this. And for my TVM, I use Quizzes, and it's got that little weird spelling to it. So make sure spell it as is, Q-U-I-Z-I-Z-Z. Next. For my students, I do not, just like Elizabeth, I do not use Google Classroom. Because it is a challenge to get onto so many different platforms. So to communicate with my students on a daily basis, to give them TVM assignments and also to provide feedback, I use Remind, which works just like regular messaging without me knowing their phone numbers or them knowing my phone number. But it looks just like what you see on the slide. It comes as a message, they can reply, and then I reply back to them. Next, please. So throughout the week, we do different things. So let's say maybe this week we are working on calendar, alphabet, and let's say present simple. So we are learning the concepts, we're practicing them, and I do use a lot of multiple choice questions when we do that practice in class. Because I feel like it's really good prep for CASA's test when they do take it online, so they know they need to click on something and only click on one. So based on what we do in the classroom, online or in person, I would create a quiz. So if it is, let's say, a morning class, it is 5 days of instruction. If it is evening, it will be 2 nights of instruction put into the quiz. Adam, next, please. So just like I mentioned, I use Quizzes.com. It is a free website that anybody can have access to. I create a quiz, so there's a little you can actually create lessons now. That's a new feature that they came up with. I have not tried it yet, but maybe I will. So what you will need to do is just click on quiz, and I usually keep it between 30 to 40 questions. They're all multiple choice. Nice thing is that they do have a library of already created quizzes, so you can just put it in the search. Hey, I'm looking for calendar. I'm looking for, it could be any subject. They have absolutely everything already created, so you can just upload those into your own quiz. And then crazy thing, level 1 students have decided that Saturday is the best day to do any extra work. So I had to go with that. So every Saturday at 11 a.m., I start a live quiz. So I just decide this is the quiz. This is the one that we're using this weekend. So I start a live quiz. And as you can see, you can share it through Google Classroom if that's the way that you communicate with your students, or I just click on the link and then I just send that link in a remind to my students. So all they have to do is open the link and say, I am ready to do this. Next, please. So the students have from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday to complete the quiz. The nice thing about quizzes is they don't have to complete the quiz right away. If let's say there is a distraction at home, your kids need them, there's a phone call, whatever it is, they can pause and then resume at a later time. The quiz projects very nicely on phones. All of my students use their phones. Nobody uses a tablet or a computer to do this. And they can complete the quiz. I have some who say, I need to have it 100% correct. Please remember that for TVM, it doesn't have to be 100% correct, but it has to be 100% complete for us to count those hours. So the next day I go back into quizzes.com and click on reports, and I can see all the names of all the students, and I can actually see have they completed it, have they not completed it, what was their success rate. And then by clicking on each individual name, I can see exactly what the percentage of their question was correct, of how many were not correct. And then it gives me the list of all the questions and how long it has taken them to answer each question. So then, Adam, if you can go to the next one, I go back to remind, that's my feedback. And I tell them, hey, here are the questions that you didn't get right. And so I will just type up the questions, and I do give them the multiple choice so that they're not thinking about it again. And then my second message is, do you think you know the answer? So then I'm expecting that they will write back to me, maybe the same day, maybe the following, and let me know what they think the correct answer is. Sometimes we go back and forth, like, hey, no, number 3 is still not correct. Let's take a look. And I give them a little bit of a clue, a little bit of a help. And if they absolutely don't get it right after, let's say 2 attempts, then I explain this to them. So that's a really good feedback for them. Once that is complete, I go into my TVM log, and I actually chose not to use the one that is provided by SID, but created just my own, and I just log in every person's completion. And then after that, I can enter my hours into SID. So that's it. And I think there was a question. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. All right, there was a question from Chris. Does it have to be live? Can you post it and then schedule, send a link and remind? I prefer it to be live. You can do it as a practice. And I have done the practice before where if, let's say, a student out of 100% gets maybe 25% correct, it's really hard to give feedback on that. So I choose to just assign it as a practice and send them a separate link. And then the only thing is with the scheduled messages, you can only schedule a message in Remind if it pertains to all of your participants. Another question is, what is the typical proxy hours you're assigned to these quizzes and assignments? Because it is between 30 to 40 questions and the feedback, it's about 45 minutes. Yes.
Okay, everyone, do you have any other questions? We have a couple minutes for Polina. So Polina, I'm seeing assessment here. And can you talk about how you provide instruction and practice, and where that fits or somehow connects to the proxy hours for this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the core curriculum for my level 1 is downtown. I'd use downtown 1. So this is what I'm kind of basing my lessons on. But because we have been online, we're still online in the evening. I decided not to choose the book because not everybody, well, nobody would have a copy of it. So I create my Google Slides based on that. And then because I want more practice so that every student can go at their own pace, I create the quiz based on what has been covered during that week. So instruction happens in class and not when they're playing the quiz. Instruction happens throughout the whole week. The question is, I heard you say this, they do this on their phones. Did you say whether they need an app or not? They do not need an app. Once they open the link, it just brings them to the website. They enter their name and click on start. Another question is, did you say you're only online? As of 2 weeks now, we are remaining online in the evening and are in person in the morning.
Polina, I know this is really nitty gritty, but what happens if two people enter the same name? Like there's 2 Aminas in your class, for example. How do you manage determining which quiz goes to which student?
When I send them the message, my initial message inviting them to the game, my message says, please enter your first and last name.
Okay, so
and
that's just...
and I will say this, sometimes my students use a game generated name. So then unfortunately, I will not be entering their TVM hours in. I don't know who did it.
Okay, so that's something you have to coach them through and
Yes,
remind
exactly.
them
Yes.
during class. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, we got about 1 more minute for any other questions for Polina, guys. So this is your chance. Okay, well, thank you so much, Polina. Let's go on to
Absolutely.
Paula. Paula, you are up, and I'm not going to touch my mouse now. Hey, Paula, we can't hear you.
Okay, I have 2 computers going and I forget which one has the microphone working. All right, again, this lesson was one I did with my higher level adult diploma and GED prep learners. And we had been spending one of our most frequent things. And now why can't I do this? Adam, it will not let me go forward. Okay, there.
I had to move my mouse.
Okay, so now I'm back. I hope. There we go. So what we've been doing in September was we looked a lot at the early beginning concepts of reading more complex text, including how to use context clues to figure out vocabulary, how to write summaries, how to find details, supporting information in a text. We spent weeks working on this, practicing this, doing instruction on this. And then this lesson came in October, I believe. It was about their opportunity to put this all into practice without any of my help at all. So this is a totally independent practice thing after we had been practicing the skills for weeks. And so this was a lesson that is from an article. It's called "By Cutting Down Forests, Humans May Be Giving Themselves Malaria." And I post them and the students do their lessons in Google Classroom. And in the materials that you can get to later, there is a link to the live Google class. I made up a special one. And so this is Adam's in there. So you can see it from a student point of view, what this looks like, if you want to know what it looks like in Google Classroom. So that's what the student sees. And then we're going to look at some of my slides to show what I see. Okay, now I have to get back to what I'm doing. No, I don't. Never mind. I'm sorry, I forgot all of our instructions on how to do this. Anyhow, there I go. No, I don't.
Paula,
Yeah, what did I do?
you closed my window.
I'm giving you back control and you're in charge now.
Okay, hold on.
I'm giving up.
No, you don't
Sorry.
need to get, you don't need to give up. You don't need to give up. Just give me a second to get the slides back. Hold on, we'll get it.
As much technology as I use every day when I'm teaching, there's always something that does not work. And it's, you know,
The
people-
technology works. You just clicked on the wrong thing. That's all.
Yeah.
No problem. We're back. We're back. And getting to your slide.
Okay. There we
And
are.
you,
I'm not going off screen again. Okay.
okay,
So there we are. So the assignment was to work with this article, and they had several things they had to do with it. And now it's still, there we go. Back up. And it was, as they read it, they were first supposed to read it through one time. I defined some of the words, but there were other words I did not define for them, and they were to figure them out on their own. Then they were to read the article again and answer the questions for understanding, and then read it as many other times as they needed to write a summary of it. So the whole lesson is a 3-hour thing. It was not in pieces, because this was, you need 3 hours to do this work. To write a good summary, it should take you all this time to do it. So one of the ways the students get feedback is when their assignment is done, they click in Google Classroom, turn in. And I set up a rubric, and all the different pieces had a different score amount, but they can see what I thought of their work. If they were doing one of the questions, it's either acceptable, needs work, or unacceptable, and well, how I define that. And then for the summary, again, where does it fall in those categories? So it's like, this is how I define it. This is what I use to assess their work with to begin with. They get a report like this. It shows where their ratings are. I also give comments, written comments, either on the writing themselves or in a private email comment to them through Google Classroom. And in this one student's example, at the bottom, I say, there's something that needs to be done different with this, but I didn't know what it was. So this is also a way for me to know I need to sit down face to face with this student and figure out what are they thinking as they're writing, what's going on, and how do we make this something that they could be doing proudly. So this kind of exercise really gives me a lot of options for being inside their brains or helping them and evaluating them and giving them good feedback about how they are doing this work. And then for recording purposes, I get this main screen that shows all of their work that they've turned in, plus a grade book entry. And this is what I use to enter my TVM hours with. So I can see that they've done it. And if I want to know the date, I would just click on their assignment, but I can see they've done it, how many points, and the little dots tell me how many TVM hours I gave it. Can't see it, but if I opened it up, you could. So that's how I keep track of what they're doing. And it's, the students I have are good at technology. They need to be at the level that they are at. If they're adult diploma, they need all these skills. If they're GED, they need these skills in technology to go forward with their next goal. They don't seem to have any real objection to doing the work. They will just do it. They know it's how they're going to show they're able to do things. They know that's how they're going to get individualized feedback on how well they're doing. And sometimes the feedback is they will do a video recording, especially with writing. And sometimes it's just a written comment, and then we can talk about them. That's why I like this, is because I can give more individualized comments and feedback. And that's why TVM has been very nice, because I don't have to rush it all and cram it all into one class period and try and deal with 15 students all at one time. I can space this out, and I can work with the students who need the work the most, and just record things better and just keep track of who's doing what. Okay, that was fast. Any questions? This is asynchronous. So it's placed in Google Classroom as an assignment. And they work on it. It's for out of class time because we don't have time in class to do it. And so when they get it done, they get it done. I usually give a due date or a work period of 2 weeks to get the work done, but it's whenever they do it. The instruction of this was all at the same time in the same classroom. This activity was the piece they did on their own at their own time to show. And they could also go back to any of the materials we did in class because they were also uploaded into Classroom. So if they forgot what a summary is supposed to be, they can go look back at the summary slides and re-instruct themselves on what it was, even though we had done it in class.
Paula, do you provide any directions for them in case they forgot exactly what they had to do? Maybe you gave the assignment 3 days ago and now they're at home.
Oh yeah. The thing I do with them is, you see the gold star? Anything they have to complete as an assignment for TVM or other things, usually it's all TVM assignments, has a gold star. Every day when they come into class, they have to sit down, open up their laptop, and log into their Google Classroom. They then do that at home as well too. They've gotten into the habit. Anything they see with a gold star, they know they have to do. They can click on it and see if they've done it because it will say on their copy turned in, or I'll have a score for it. But that's how they can check whether they've done it or not. I just use the emoji of a star. They now ask, is this a star one or a triangle one? Triangle assignments are things we do in class. Stars are what we do on our own. Yes, and Google, it does connect with Remind. I tried doing both of them last year and it was too much technology for me to manage. I could not keep them straight, so I knew the students couldn't. So we're just using all Google Classroom now. That's it. I put all their notices. I can schedule things in the Google Classroom stream that can go out to them. It goes straight to their email. I don't have to be juggling 2 programs because I would always forget to add a new student to the Remind. How do I label the assignment with the star? I've got these letters E 2.2. E is because it's in what we call our academics E class. 2 is unit 2, which is the one where we're working on details. And the point 2 is the second assignment we're doing in this unit. So
Sorry, Paula. My question wasn't clear. I was just wondering how you actually get the star there.
Oh, there is, you can download an extension for Chrome that does emojis. And so I just open up that extension and I pick the star emoji and it just pastes in. Yeah, and there's lots of ways. You don't even have to add that kind of star. You could do anything there. You could just make the first letter red or anything. It's just enough to trigger their mind saying, oh, I should do this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
We got about 1 minute left for Paula if you have questions, guys. All right, well, just wrapping up here in the last minute. If you want to go back, we went really quick. This is a 45-minute session. Links to all of their materials are here in this slide. Thank you so much for coming. If you have any TVM or distance learning related questions, please email us at the support email. And I was asked to remind you guys that the next session, this is the final session, but there are affinity groups happening next. And they're a wonderful opportunity to connect with your colleagues from around the state according to the affinity group options. So thanks for coming. And thank you so much to our presenters.